We're not dependent upon me, the CEO, or any one of our individual.
You know this and I know this. They're chasing confidence, but where
You are not properly prepared with a good team, they're going to eat you up, honestly.
that's
Because they've done it a hundred times.
We all exit our company eventually. The question is, will it be on your terms or someone else's? Strategy matters. Timing matters. The right partner changes everything. Brought to you by Meritage Partners. Here is your host, Brian Franco, author of The Inevitable Exit. This is the M&A Guy Podcast.
Most founders spend years building their business, but very few spend time understanding how capital actually evaluates what they've built. And the reality is, if you don't understand how money thinks, you won't maximize the outcome when it matters most. I'm Brian Franco, founder and CEO of Meritage Partners, and this is the M&A Guy Podcast, where we help founders build companies that attract capital and exit on their terms. Does that sound beautiful, Nate?
I love it, Brian. Sign me up.
Sign me up, right? Well, today I am joined by Nate Collins. He's with Raymond James, a firm known very well for working with business owners, investors, and institutions on capital strategies for that long-term financial outcome. Nate, thanks for being on the show with us. Appreciate your time on a Friday before you get out to, you got a fun concert ahead of you.
Yeah, Brian, thank you so much for having me on the show. Very excited to talk to you and share my experiences with your listeners. And I do have a fun show to go to after this. Gonna go see Wyclef Jean, who I didn't really know was still around, but for us with gray hair, it'll be a good throwback there. And, you also have to spend time with the wife from time to time.
That's it. We'll have fun tonight, but let's, until then, we're going to dive into I got a few hot swap questions for us. Love to hear your experience, your case studies. I'll kind of sprinkle in some of my experiences and we'll go from there. But Nate, from your perspective, how does sophisticated capital evaluate companies beyond just revenue and EBITDA? And, my quick answer is obviously they're going to underwrite to risk, but in your experience and in your business, because you've exited a company, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess the relevant story here is that I sold my company in 2019, and it's a company that I bought into in the early 2000s. The company was about, founded in 1830. So do the math, almost 180 years old. And then in the early 1900s, it had been taken over by three managers. I guess it was an MBO back then, a management buyout.
Yes.
And those three, I guess, business owners then passed the company on down generation to generation. And then I was actually able to buy into the company.
Amazing.
In the early 2000s, mostly unsophisticated investors, as in they don't do it professionally. And it turned out to be like 16 different families. So when I took the company over in 2011, it was, poorly managed. It was very, it was not a sophisticated management team. It was not a sophisticated investor group, a sophisticated board. And it was, like a lot of family businesses are. And, that's not a bad thing. That's just how things evolve. And so there was a lot of cleanup to do. And really with, just luck and perspiration, we were able to turn that business around. By 2019, we were kind of the most, dynamic business or the dynamic company in that niche industry.
Yes.
And we were able to sell to the largest PE-backed strategic buyer in the music licensing space. So it was very fortunate, and learned a lot of things. And just going to your question, Brian, like what are people looking for what are investors looking for when buying a business? Right. We can get into that. We can also then get into, the challenges of leaving your business and without being properly prepared. Basically, when you're thinking about selling a business, it's all about preparation. It's all about investing in your advisors. Invest in the best advisors you can. The value that you get from the price to the ease of transaction is all dependent on how good your advisors are. So start early, invest in your advisors. Now, going back to your question, what are people looking for? Our company, we were fortunate enough to sell for what I think was 2 times what we were worth.
Wow.
Maybe not 2 times what we were worth. Maybe we sold for exactly what we were worth, but 2 times what I think the industry average was
Okay.
for companies like mine. We were a mid-market business, mid 8-figure in revenue, mid 8-figure transaction, enterprise value, 100 employees, headquartered in New York, offices in London and Los Angeles. And besides getting a very good multiple because it was a strategic, which helps,
Yes.
we also did what any business owner out there, what your M&A advisor is going to tell you to do.
Correct.
First, we were not dependent upon me, the CEO, or any one of our individual teammates. We just were
Yeah.
very disciplined about creating redundancies, creating systems, and creating policies and procedures to the point where it was actually very annoying. I was very annoying to the rest of my team because on an annual basis, I would go to I go to them and say, okay, it's time. This is the month. This is
Yeah.
January. This is when we update our policies and procedures. And they'd have to go through and just mark everything up. And it's really important to do that.
Absolutely.
And when we eventually sold our company, fortunately, they took our entire team, but we could have just handed them our business by handing them the book, the policies and procedures. This is how everything runs.
Yes.
So there was that, not being dependent upon the owner. We had everything documented. We'd moved from a very paper, very manual, process system when I first got there, where we were actually taking Xerox copies of everything and putting them in files and, all of that to
Yeah.
digitizing everything. So
Absolutely.
during that time, we also went through all of our legal documents and we updated our accounting processes from cash accounting to accrual based GAAP accounting so that when actually did sell the business, our numbers could be trusted by the buyers. They were like, yes, we understand how your business works. And our legal documents were all in order. We didn't have any loose ends.
Correct.
And then I think another really big one was we had best in class tech stack. And
Okay.
that was important. I got really lucky. I took that business over in 2011. Cloud computing had started in late 2010s. So
Mhm.
it was right. I was right at the right time. I started adopting some software as a service, tech platforms, and we integrated it. And we actually invested a lot of money into it. Now, that was also helpful. Now, I tell you all these things, but I'll also tell you this. I had never planned on selling the business. I didn't do these because I was interested in maximizing the value of our company. It just happened to do that. I did it because I wanted to make my life easier and I wanted to
Yes.
make our company more profitable. So easier and profitable. I mean, that's, the first few years when I was running that company, I didn't sleep. Partly
Yeah.
because I was busy and partly because I was so nervous that I was going to burn the company down.
Yeah.
But we put those processes into place and we invested in our technology. We invested in our team. We spent the time creating processes.
Good.
And eventually we came out with an incredibly dynamic company that somebody valued much higher than other companies in our space.
That's amazing because, even though you were building the business and you had your reasons and influences as you described, but sophisticated capital, especially strategically backed groups by private equity investors, they're underwriting to risk. They're underwriting to predictable revenue streams. They're underwriting to, what's the leadership depth in your company and how can that team and systems and predictable revenue lead to scalability? And, you really, you said a lot of what I talk about in my book, The Inevitable Exit, because when you're building a business to exit, you're accountable to building an asset, not just a job, not just a job description, not just income and distributions. You're building an asset. And when you can do that, and that's exactly what you did, it's going to attract that sophisticated capital and they're going to value what you build because they're not just chasing revenue. You know this and I know this. They're chasing confidence, but where where does confidence lie? Well, confidence lies in the predictable nature of your business. And when you build the machine, your business, in a way that is scalable beyond just you, so you stripped out that key man issue that most companies have. That is a big win because you've ultimately built a valuable asset that was irresistible to the market. And I would say, let's assume your assumption is correct that you received twice what your peers were receiving in terms of enterprise value. And I'll say that's exactly because of how you built the business and you built it designed to attract that capital. And so kudos to you because most founders, they don't connect the dots there, right? They're working on building the business to derive an income or generate an income that could sustain a lifestyle that they desire, but they neglect to realize they are building an asset. More specifically, they're building an investable asset, right? And so when you think about that, Nate, what do you think the difference is between a company that performs well and one that actually attracts capital?
Well, I think it's very easy to perform well for a year or two or a short period of time, even if you don't have a very strong business platform.
Mm,
If you're not running your company maybe like a modern day institution,
yeah.
circumstances can hit. Maybe one
Yes.
of your competitors goes bankrupt, or maybe there's something in legislation passes and you get the benefit of that. But in a long term, it's very difficult to outperform the market if you
Yeah.
are not always investing in your business and
Yes.
thinking of how you can improve it every day. And I'm not a business guru. I'm not Jack Welch. I think I am just the same as everybody out there. I think what really just made us very, I guess, appealing to that capital is that we just were always investing in ourselves, and you have to invest. You're either investing your
You
money
do.
or your energy or both, and we invested both. And
You did.
I remember our shareholders, I presented to them our tech plans for investing in our technology, and they said, "This is great. So we're just going to spend this money this year, and then we don't have to spend money for how long? When's the next time we need to spend money?"
Yeah.
It's like, no, we're
Yes.
going to spend this money every year for
CapEx,
for
as we call it.
forever.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
And some people will think, well, or I guess the initial concern was that we'd spend that money to improve our technology and then we didn't need as many people.
Yeah.
And that's not how it worked,
That's
right?
right.
We invested that money, made our processes more efficient, made them less, I guess, a lot less manual. And what we
You could
did
say
was
that.
we transitioned those roles into more customer facing. So
Mm,
we not only were able to become more efficient, but we were actually a lot better at working with the clients or the
yeah.
customers. So our revenues grew. Right? I
Mm,
didn't have this big vision on how do you grow revenues? I don't know. How about invest in your tech stack? That's not what I thought. I thought, my God, how do we stop our team from messing up so much because we have so
yeah.
much manual labor? How do we fix this? Well, let's invest in technology. It just so happened that increased our revenue, which increased our profitability, which then was really, really impressive to somebody.
Absolutely. Well, here's the reality. If your business depends on you, it's not investable and it will not attract institutional capital. We always say
Yeah.
if your business can't operate without you, it's not yet an asset, right? And going back to my earlier comment, you built a very attractive asset and you enabled institutional capital to come in and want to pay you a premium for that business because you have done those things that are going to be, I always liken it to an insurance policy, right? If you and I were investors, we want to inject insurance policies on how to protect the company. And the way you did it with structure, with governance, with systems, with visibility. And that's why it was irresistible to institutional capital.
Right.
And I applaud you for that because there again, it takes sometimes decades for founders and operators to really connect with this.
Yeah, and just to continue with that thought, now that jogged my memory. after they purchased the company,
Yeah.
a few months later, I was like, all right, I'm ready to leave. This baby is no longer my baby. It's now your baby. And they said, no, you need to stay because we're still doing the integration and you
Yeah.
know where all the bodies are buried.
Yeah.
Quoting them, they said, you know where the bodies are buried and how everything works. And I said to them, you don't need me. There aren't any buried bodies. And my team here knows everything. And you hired my team. They
Yeah.
know everything that I know. You do not need me at all. And I stepped away and they never once called me for anything.
Yeah. Great. Well, again, I applaud you for it because I was going to say too, you said earlier I think the word you said out, you were annoying to your team, right? But I think you were absolutely obsessive about the right things in the company, which gave you that urgency to implement those things that you've described already. And it's the learning that and the teaching that we are constantly providing, clients that are looking to prepare for a capital event. That capital event could be for a recap or growth or an exit. But when you do that, the outcomes are fantastic, right? And you unlock this liquidity trapped into the business and everyone wins, right? So
yeah, we changed the lives of a lot of not only the shareholders, because as I said, they didn't even know they had a business, but now they had something very valuable, much more valuable to them, which was the cash.
yeah,
But also the employees really benefited because
that's right.
they ended up at a much larger company where they had greater visibility to the outside world. They were able to get recruited to other music companies. They had more room internally to grow. We only had 100 employees. Now they were in a company with 5,000 employees. So they had greater mobility upwards. They were learning new things. So the employees benefited, the shareholders benefited, the employees
Mhm.
benefited, and our clients benefited. Now they were with
Absolutely.
a much larger company who was able to provide them with even more resources.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So I want to talk about you preparing for that liquidity event early. And so, in your perspective, in your experience, when should founders and operators start thinking about capital strategy and inevitably a liquidity event?
Well, the stock answer is as soon as you start the business, but that's
Yes, that's right.
you know
Yes,
that's
it is.
not necessarily realistic when you're just
Uh,
trying to keep your head above water. You're not thinking, oh boy, I can't wait till I sell this. You're usually like, oh my God, I can't wait till I'm not so concerned about making payroll on Monday.
that's right. That's
So,
right.
but realistically, if you can, well, think about it as soon as you become profitable and as soon as you have a minute to breathe and your head is above water and you can look
Yeah.
around and see where you are in that ocean of entrepreneurship in
Yeah.
which if you don't put your head up above the water and look where you're going, who knows where you're going to end up. But so I think the realistic time frame to start thinking about exiting preparing to exit is 5 years,
Okay.
beforehand.
Yes.
Because and Brian, I'm sure you are on board with that. There are some tax strategies. So now I'm in wealth management and
Yes.
I wish I had myself before I sold my business because I ended up paying millions and millions of dollars in taxes I could have avoided.
Absolutely.
And that's the part that doesn't even hurt me. The part that hurts me is that mentally I wasn't prepared to go into the next chapter, but we'll focus on just taxes. So there are tax strategies that you need to consider at least 5 years in advance.
Yes.
Some of the ones that most people are familiar with are qualified small business stock, section 1202
Yes.
of the
QSBS.
or yep, QSBS, and that you have to have that opinion letter 5 years before you sell. And if you do, that means the first 10 to $15 million or 10 times your cost basis in a company is exempt from capital gains taxes. Now
That's
that's
right.
amazing. That's like the most amazing thing you could ever have.
It is.
No taxes. That's
Yes.
incredible. I want that.
Sign everyone up.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm grateful that we pay taxes. It has created this incredible country that we live in.
Absolutely.
But I'm going to pay what I owe, and then I'm going to decide where everything else I make, where I can spend that or donate it to, and what causes are important to me.
That's right.
There are a lot of great organizations out there that do a lot of great things, and
Yes.
some of them I want to contribute to, and others I don't.
Exactly. But you have those
So,
options, and you only
and
have
yeah,
those options if you prepare.
yeah, you want to have those options. So 5 years ahead of, uh, 5 years in advance of the actual transaction date, you should be being prepared. And then just your trust and estate planning is going to take years,
Yeah.
to get through that on a personal side.
Yes.
Then you're going to be thinking about, all right, well, how do I optimize the value in my business? You're going to call Brian, and you're going to say, hey, I got this business. And he's going to go, okay, is the business dependent on you? Are you the best salesperson? You're going to say, yeah, I am. He said, well, you need to spend 3 years.
Yeah.
You need to spend 3 years building your sales team and making sure that your sales team doesn't need you. Go on
Correct.
vacation for a year. So that 5-year window is key. And, I'd say 10 years. And I actually am working with some clients who are saying, I'm going to sell my company in 10 years. I want to start being prepared for that.
That's
And,
great.
it's really fun to work with them, because just having people that are that concerned with doing the right things
That's
is
right.
so refreshing, because I'd hope that nobody approaches a transaction or a business exit like I did, because
Yeah.
I made so many mistakes.
Well, you paid the tuitions, as they say, and as I like to say, to learn those things that you did. Now you are sitting on the side of wealth advisory, and you have tools that you didn't have before that you can now bring to your clients, such as QSBS. You didn't say DAF, but there's donor advised funds as well that you could utilize. But I knew what you were implying when you said that, when you talk about charitable or donations and giving and things of such. But we know that the liquidity isn't just an event, it's a strategy. And I liken myself to a deal architect. And as an architect approaches designing the most beautiful building or skyscrapers or whatever it may be, even a bridge, you have to spend the time planning. Like they say, measure twice, cut once, right? And that's what you're doing now. And it's great, because the best outcomes happen when founders build with the end in mind, not reacting when opportunity shows up. And that's important. That's extremely important.
Yeah. I think it's really important for anybody who's considering an exit to really understand their goals,
Yeah.
not just their business goals, but their personal goals and their financial goals.
Exactly.
Once you figure that out, typically with the help of an advisor, with your advisors, then you can have a successful exit. If you don't really understand that and you're not working with advisors, well, first of all, if you're not working with advisors, you're not going to know which questions to ask, because you've never done this
That's right.
before.
Correct. You're right. Because
Advisors
we
have
liken
done it
ourselves.
before.
Yeah, we liken ourselves to a Sherpa, right? Climbing the highest peaks and the highest mountains. And we're your Sherpa will guide you and lead you, and they're going to tell you what's around the corner, when you need a rest, when you need to eat or hydrate, and then continue going due to weather changes or whatever the case may be. But advisors, you are paying them for that experience. You're paying them to tell you where the landmines are buried along that journey. And when you could do that, and we work in concert with wealth advisors like yourself, and it's important that we are mindful of these needs in terms of planning. And it ultimately gives founders and operators optionality. That's what you and I are talking about. And the more time you have, the more options you will be presented. And whether that's you're raising capital or bringing on partners or entirely exiting the company, right? But the first step, that they should take today is to align their business with really how the capital markets think. And specifically, you and I are talking more about the private capital markets. Yes, there are publicly traded buyers in the marketplace as well, but most of these transactions in the realm of SMBs are acquired by strategics, and those strategics are typically backed by private equity.
Yeah. And in those strategics backed by private equity have bought a lot of companies.
Yeah.
And they know how to optimize the value of their deals. And when I say optimize, it means they're trying to not pay you, the seller, a lot of money.
Correct.
Or trying to reduce their risk.
Yeah.
And if you are not properly prepared with a good team they're going to eat you up, honestly.
That's
Because
right.
they've done it a hundred times. They know all the tricks.
Yes. Yes. They've been there. They've done that. Well,
Yeah,
Nate,
it's kind of like going into, it's kind of like going into a lawsuit without an attorney.
yes.
And the other guy has hired somebody from New York City that they bill $1,800 an hour, and you're there trying to defend yourself. You're going to get killed.
Yes. Unfortunately, yes. It's some people when they choose to go in, impropers, they call it, and represent themselves. They could find themselves in more trouble and in more ways than they have ever imagined. Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, I
Nate.
was very lucky. I had a great. I made a lot of mistakes. The one great thing I did was I had an incredible M&A advisor. She killed it. She crushed it.
Amazing. I love it.
And
I love hearing that.
I had a good M&A attorney and a quality of earnings, a good accounting team. So from the business standpoint, and that I think also contributed to our incredibly high multiple. Thank goodness for them. The fee that I
Yes.
paid for them, not even a blink. I didn't even blink when I saw that number come across. I'm like, yes,
Yeah.
here, you earned this and more.
Yeah, it's right. You're absolutely right. I mean, the goal always for us, we're when we are the NA advisor on a transaction is, we create more value than we're asking for, and that's always the goal for our clients. Nate, so the work you do now in wealth planning and tax planning, it's important that folks reach out to you if they're considering an exit because there are a lot of nuances, a lot of rules that are there. Call them tools, right? There's a lot of tools in the toolbox that could be utilized to help position them and give them those options you and I are talking about. How best do folks reach out to you, Nate?
Thanks for asking. So the best way is to find me on the internet. So very easy to find on LinkedIn, which is everybody's card. I'm just Nate Collins, Raymond James. I think my LinkedIn handle is Nate-Collins. My email address is nate.collins@raymondjames.com. And look, if all else fails, just Google Nate Collins, Raymond James, and there I am. Easily findable on the internet.
That's right. That's right. Well, Nate, thanks for being on with us. And if you're building a business and want to understand how to turn that into real enterprise value, start with principles behind successful exits. Nate talked to you about a few of those. I shared a few case studies and stories that ultimately have helped our clients. And Nate's situation helped himself, but also is now on the side of the table where he's helping his clients on the sell side, preparing for those liquidity events. And if you really want to dive in deep, grab a copy of my book, The Inevitable Exit. You can find that at inevitableexit.com. And if you're surrounded, and more importantly, though, I was going to say, if you want to surround yourself around founders who are building valuable companies and preparing for their next chapter, join us in our new community called the Empire Builder Community, where we educate and teach our participants and members on how to build for their first or second exit. I'm really grateful for Nate and the time that he spent, his wisdom that he shared with us, because listen, capital rewards clarity every time, and clarity comes from preparation, as Nate has shared with you. I'm Brian Franco, and thank you for joining this episode of the M&A Guy Podcast.